Sam and Dakota's dream wedding, once envisioned as the culmination of their love story and celebrated in the media as the wedding of the century, gradually found itself under the shadow of external pressures and an avalanche of influences that neither of them had anticipated. And though on the surface their romance appeared to be touched by the kind of magic that people associate with fairy tales, beneath it lay an increasingly complex struggle between personal desire, public perception, career, responsibilities, and the weight of familial and professional expectations. A struggle that tested the resilience of their bond at every turn. Sam Heughan, the Scottish actor adored by millions across the globe for his unforgettable portrayal in the Outlander series, had for years cultivated an image of being wholly dedicated to his craft, the kind of man who might willingly forego the complications of a long-term entanglement in order to safeguard his career and private life, a perception that made many of his admirers assume he would remain unattached indefinitely, a figure loyal to his art more than to any individual. And yet, fate often intervenes when least expected, for when Dakota Johnson, the actress best known for her role in the 50 Shades trilogy as well as her increasingly respected presence in art house projects, entered his life at a film event, everything seemed to shift with startling immediacy, as though an invisible thread had been tied between them long before either was aware of it. Their first glances across the crowded space igniting a spark too powerful to ignore, and though both had been weathered by past unfulfilled love affairs and carried the natural skepticism that comes with celebrity life, with its endless intrusions and betrayals of privacy, there was something undeniable in the way their energies aligned, almost as if they had been waiting for one another amidst the noise of their respective worlds. And so, against the cautious rhythms of Hollywood romance, they stepped into something that felt deeply real. Only a few months into their relationship, Sam, who was not known for public displays of intimacy, surprised fans and critics alike by announcing his love for Dakota openly in the media, a bold move that contradicted his usual reserved nature and revealed the seriousness of his feelings. While Dakota, too, usually guarded, did not hide the happiness that shone from her whenever she appeared by his side. The photographs of the two walking hand in hand down red carpets, exchanging gentle, knowing glances at premieres, whispering into each other's ears while ignoring the flashes of cameras, soon convinced even the most cynical observers that theirs was not a publicity stunt but a genuine bond. And when the news of their impending wedding broke, the frenzy surrounding them multiplied, for the story seemed too perfect to resist. Two stars from different cinematic universes finding their forever in each other, with the promise of a wedding set in a Scottish castle, no less, a location steeped in history, mystery, and romance, the kind of backdrop that could make even the most jaded reporter sigh. Dakota, with her love of classic, almost old-world beauty, embraced Sam's vision of a summer wedding in his homeland, one that would be draped in white flowers illuminated by the flickering glow of candlelight upon ancient stone walls, and serenaded by the harmonious notes of harps and violins echoing through vaulted ceilings. A wedding that would gather close friends from Hollywood, Europe, and beyond. A truly global event that fashion magazines immediately dubbed the wedding of the century. Speculating eagerly on what gown Dakota might wear, some imagined her in lace inspired by vintage European designers. Others dreamed of bold, modern silhouettes from Parisian houses, while equally fascinated by the prospect of Sam donning traditional Scottish attire, complete with tartan and sporran, a merging of Hollywood glamour with Scottish tradition that promised to enchant the world. But as is often the case, the very intensity of the public gaze that celebrated their romance soon began to turn into a suffocating force. For in the weeks following the announcement, the first shadows appeared in the form of rumors and whispers, tabloids hinting that Dakota's family, particularly her mother Melanie Griffith, while affectionate towards Sam, harbored reservations about whether her daughter might be sacrificing too much of her blossoming Hollywood career to follow a man whose base of life and work remained in Europe, an echo of an age-old tension between love and ambition, between the pull of home and the call of professional destiny. And though Dakota dismissed such speculations outwardly, the truth was that she too worried about balancing the demands of her career with the vision of a quieter life in Scotland, far from the constant hum of Hollywood. Simultaneously, murmurs emerged from the set of Outlander, with producers allegedly concerned that Sam's personal entanglements were distracting him from the demands of filming, a narrative the press eagerly seized upon. framing him as a man torn between love and duty, while adding yet another layer of strain to his shoulders. Perhaps most notably, however, was the swirl of media stories involving Katrina Balfe, Sam's longtime co-star and friend, whose closeness with him had always sparked idle fan gossip, and now, with the wedding looming, the press eagerly speculated about whether their friendship had cooled, suggesting rifts where perhaps there were none, but in doing so fueling a relentless cycle of headlines that painted the wedding not as a celebration of love, but as a battlefield of conflicting loyalties, career anxieties, and strained friendships, the once magical narrative now slowly being transformed into controversy. The kind of controversy that breeds doubt in the most secure of hearts. For Sam, a man innately reserved and uncomfortable with the idea of his private life being dissected daily by strangers, the intrusion was particularly painful, even as Dakota, seasoned by years of navigating Hollywood scandals, maintained her composure with smiles and a graceful silence. Yet even she admitted in private moments that the pressure was beginning to weigh heavily, confessing to Sam in one quiet evening conversation that she feared their wedding was no longer truly theirs, but rather a stage upon which family disagreements, industry expectations, and media narratives were playing out. And though Sam held her hand and insisted that nothing else mattered but their bond, reassuring her that love was all they needed, the reality remained that the external forces encroaching upon their plans were impossible to fully ignore. The wedding planners, caught between their romantic vision and the logistical nightmares created by the press, were constantly forced to revise details, shielding the couple from paparazzi intrusions while managing the demands of sponsors who sought to exploit the wedding as a fashion spectacle rather than the intimate celebration it was meant to be, a tension that Dakota articulated with worry when she observed aloud that their big day was at risk of becoming less about their union and more about pleasing others. Whether family members with unspoken concerns, industry colleagues with unfulfilled expectations, or designers seeking to turn her gown into a global advertisement. Melanie Griffith, though loving towards Sam, could not help voicing her maternal concerns, cautious that her daughter might be swept into a life far from the opportunities she had worked so hard to cultivate. And even as Dakota reassured her mother, the seed of doubt lingered. For was it possible to truly balance love, career, and personal autonomy in the glare of such a spotlight? For Sam, too, the conflict was palpable, as he was proud of his heritage and longed to bring Dakota into the embrace of his homeland, yet increasingly wary that what was meant to be a sacred exchange of vows was being transformed into a global media circus. His castle walls no longer a sanctuary but the backdrop for a show that others wished to script. And so the closer the wedding approached, the more the dream of a timeless romance clashed with the reality of celebrity life, until the couple found themselves standing at a crossroads where their greatest challenge was not in loving each other, for that love remained steady, but in defending that love against the weight of expectation, speculation, and the hungry gaze of a world that seemed to claim ownership over their story. And in this crucible of pressure, they were forced to ask themselves the most difficult question of all. Could they reclaim their wedding, their narrative, their love as their own, or would it dissolve under the relentless tide of out?
What are your plans after you graduate?
I'm just trying to get through finals right now.
And then?
And then I was planning on moving here to Seattle.
Marriage, as Dakota had once been reminded by her own family in the midst of late-night conversations, was never solely about love or the chemistry that binds two people together in a dazzling romance. It was also about the delicate harmony of two lives, two careers, two sets of ambitions, and two families with their own traditions and expectations. And when her daughter-like voice of conscience asked her pointedly, "Are you sure you're ready to leave Hollywood to follow him?" It was not merely a question but a mirror reflecting Dakota's deepest anxieties. For though she adored Sam with all her being, she could not help but wonder whether she was strong enough to abandon, or at least loosen her grip on, the film capital that had nurtured her career, her identity, and the world in which she had grown into herself. Meanwhile, across the sea in the rugged yet poetic landscapes of Scotland, Sam's family, with the best of intentions yet deeply rooted in their own cultural ideals, hoped that Dakota would swiftly adapt to their traditions, envisioning her as the mistress of an old castle, wrapped in the customs of Scottish life, a life far removed from the glimmering lights of Los Angeles, the constant flashbulbs of premieres, and the endless carousel of Hollywood chatter. For to them, love was not about red carpets. and press photographs but about hearths, history, and the enduring rhythm of the land. And so the stage was set. Two families, two worlds, two conflicting sets of expectations, and Sam and Dakota caught in the middle like characters in a play they had not chosen to perform in. Their every word and movement dissected by a public that thrived on the drama. And just as the waters seemed troubled enough, the storm named Katrina entered the scene. Her name whispered like a spark tossed into a dry field of hay, waiting only for the faintest wind to ignite into an inferno. For during an interview about Outlander, when asked casually about Sam's wedding, Katrina Balfe, Sam's longtime co-star and dear friend, offered nothing more than a smile and a cautious comment, saying simply, "I just hope Sam makes the right decision. He's always been a great friend and well, I hope he doesn't lose that." Yet those words, innocent in intention and born perhaps from a desire to remain neutral, became fodder for an insatiable media machine, with headlines screaming, "Katrina opposes the wedding," and fans across the internet speculating wildly that this wedding had fractured a cherished friendship, turning whispers into roars and placing Dakota into an impossible position. She did not want to be jealous, nor did she wish to compete with Katrina's years-long bond with Sam, and yet public opinion, always hungry for rivalry, painted her as the intruder, the third person who had stepped into a sacred friendship, a narrative both cruel and untrue. And though Sam was furious, knowing in his heart that Katrina's words carried no malice, he was equally aware that every syllable uttered in the public arena was magnified and distorted until it bore no resemblance to the original, and thus his relationship with Dakota, already tested by the burdens of family expectation and professional speculation, now found itself under even more relentless pressure. As the wedding day crept closer, instead of joy filling their hearts, tension swirled like storm clouds above them. For the press trailed their every step, documenting even the smallest details of their lives, while the two families remained at odds, one side quietly fretting about Dakota's career and independence, the other envisioning her as a cultural bridge to Scotland, and meanwhile rumors of resistance, fractures, and broken ties spread uncertainly yet powerfully, seeping into the couple's private moments like a draft through a locked door, until one sleepless night, Dakota, overwhelmed, burst into tears in Sam's arms, whispering through sobs that she could not bear the thought of their happiest day becoming a battlefield or a performance for the world, and that, if it came to it, she would rather cancel the wedding than participate in a spectacle that belonged to everyone but themselves. Her words trembling with fear yet grounded in truth, and Sam, holding her tightly, felt the beat of her heart against his chest and knew with certainty that she was right. For he too longed for authenticity, not the hollow glare of camera flashes. He loved Dakota deeply, believed fully in the resilience of their bond, and though the world around them seemed determined to frame their story as fragile or compromised, he recognized that their love was the one solid truth, and so he asked himself, could a wedding held before hundreds of eyes, scrutinized by the media, adorned with the expectations of family and friends, ever truly represent happiness, or would it inevitably become a showpiece, a stage where their vows would be drowned out by the roar of public spectacle? It was then that an unexpected solution began to form in his mind, a radical but liberating thought, and when he finally shared it with Dakota, it startled her. For Sam proposed that they would indeed marry, but not in the ancient castle that had been reserved, not in front of hundreds of guests, not beneath the intrusive gaze of cameras and journalists, but rather quietly, intimately, and entirely on their own terms, a small ceremony shared only with those who mattered most. No press, no sponsors, no flashing bulbs, no endless scrutiny, only love made sacred in silence. And when Dakota heard these words, tears filled her eyes again. But this time they were tears of relief and happiness. For in that moment she understood that Sam had chosen not grandeur, not spectacle, but her, their love, and the quiet truth of what marriage should be. While the press churned with speculation that the wedding of the century might be cancelled, Sam and Dakota slipped away into the Highlands, carrying only their closest family and friends, and in a modest chapel surrounded by the stillness of nature, they stood together, Dakota in a simple yet elegant gown that reflected her essence rather than fashion's demands, Sam in understated attire that honored his heritage without flaunting it. Their hands clasped as soft music filled the air. No cameras, no microphones, only the intimacy of whispered vows. And when Sam, his voice steady but tender, promised, "I will be with you forever, no matter what the world says," Dakota replied with words that cut through all the noise that had surrounded them. "I do not need a perfect wedding. I just need you, and everything else will fade into silence." And in that exchange, all the gossip, all the rumors, all the speculations of fans and media alike dissolved into irrelevance. For what endured was the truth that two people, against the tide of outside forces, had chosen love in its purest form, unburdened by spectacle, free from the demands of others. A secret ceremony that no tabloid could twist, no headline could exaggerate, and no rumor could stain. And though the world continued to chatter, they walked out of that chapel as husband and wife, no longer haunted by whether their wedding would be happiness or performance. For they had written their own story and proved that true love, when defended with courage, can triumph quietly even in the loudest of worlds. Sam Heughan and Dakota Johnson's love story was once celebrated as a fairy tale, destined for the wedding of the century in a Scottish castle. But behind the glamour, both faced a storm of expectations. Dakota's family worried she might leave behind Hollywood, while Sam's family imagined her settling into the quiet traditions of Scotland. And then came the media whispers, magnified when Katrina Balfe, Sam's longtime co-star, spoke innocently about his choices. The press twisted her words, fueling rumors that their friendship was broken, and painting Dakota as an outsider. Caught between two worlds, Dakota broke down one night, telling Sam she feared their wedding was becoming a show for everyone else, not a moment for themselves. Sam, holding her close, realized the truth. Love needed no spectacle, so he proposed a secret ceremony, away from cameras and sponsors. And while the world speculated their wedding was canceled, Sam and Dakota quietly exchanged vows in a small Highland chapel, surrounded only by family and closest friends. No headlines, no flashes, only love. When Sam whispered, "I'll be with you forever," no matter what the world